Good evening. Man, tough act to follow, Jordan. Especially for a guy who has a outline and with a couple of bullet points, not having a sweet presentation with videos. But no, great to hear all the work that's being done there. And I'm just jealous I don't have 2 kilos of Ethiopian coffee waiting for me at home right now. But I did want to, I actually wanted to talk to you about something that was really encouraging to me as well. So it kind of is parallel with what Jordan talked about. Most of you know recently we had an opportunity for all the men to gather and have a men's retreat up in the far, far land of Trinity, Texas. And it was just really encouraging for me. So I hope that tonight maybe I can share with you some thoughts and just some points of conversation that I had with some of the men there that were encouraging to me, and I will continue to focus on, this year as I try and improve my relationship with my brothers and sisters here and my relationship with God. I've titled this lesson, Q, Robert, How to Win Christian Friends and Serve God's People. I stole this title from a famous book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, and I just changed it to fit the scenario. But it was a book I read a long, long time ago when I first got into sales, and it was a very, very influential self-help book, probably one of the most influential self-help books of the 20th century, written by Dale Carnegie, and really just the synopsis of the book is just how to communicate better, how to be authentic, how to care about people, how to listen well, how to show empathy, all of these things that go into building strong relationships. And I thought about that, and I was like, man, the men's retreat was literally about all of this. We didn't actually say it, but that's what it was about. It was about building friendships so that we could influence each other to do the right thing, to honor God. So as I was thinking about that, I was like, man, I really want to kind of to draw attention to some of these things because I really believe that this is one of the best things we do every year as men, is get together and talk about our walks with Christ, talk about our struggles, give each other words of encouragement. We become vulnerable to one another. And so to me, that's very important. And if we look at I'm gonna go through a bunch of verses here so you can either listen or follow along, but they're not going to be rapid fire. But one of the reasons why it's so important is because we can help each other through difficult times, and we can accomplish more when we're not alone. If you read in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 and 10, it says, 2 are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up, but pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. This was so evident to me during the men's retreat. It gave me a lot of confidence that no matter what I'm going through in life, no matter what struggles I have, I'm not alone. Not only do I have God to lean on and Christ to lean on, but I've got brothers and sisters in Christ, and it's because I've been intentional, and other brothers have been intentional about having a relationship with me. One thing I wanted to try and do while I'm making these points is something that David actually likes to do occasionally, is point towards like modern science or modern psychology. So if I were a psychologist, what would I tell you are the benefits of building strong relationships in your life? And there's this theory called, as a part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, basically it says relationships and social connections are a fundamental human need and are essential for our psychological well-being and our fulfillment. To dumb that down, basically strong relationships are not just a nice to have in our life, but they're actually essential for overall happiness and well-being. So I would translate that back to the spiritual meaning and saying that Having relationships with our brothers and sisters in Christ are not just a nice to have, but they're essential to our overall happiness and well-being spiritually. And it's certainly a major factor in contributing to my overall feeling of like hope and joy when it comes to this, to my spirit, to that part of me that's connected with God. I feel that connection most strongly when I'm here, when I'm with my brothers and sisters. So what can we do? What are some things that we can actively do to build these strong relationships? Well, in Proverbs 17, verse 17, it says, "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for a time of adversity." Okay, the first part I get, friend loves at all times, but a brother is born in a time of adversity. What does that mean? Well, I think what it means is we shouldn't only be there for our brothers and sisters when times are good, but we should especially be there for our brothers and sisters when times are bad, when they're at their lowest low, when they really need help. It's an opportunity for us, and we have to be intentional about seeking those opportunities and being there for each other. There's this psychological theory called social exchange theory. So on the flip side, the science side, this theory says relationships are based on a series of exchanges where people seek to maximize the rewards and minimize their costs. Sounds a little self-serving at first, but basically what this is saying to me is investing in our relationships and attempting to create a positive balance of rewards over costs. We're more likely to build strong, fulfilling relationships if we're focused on creating a positive balance of rewards over costs. I think we can again flip that over again onto the spiritual side and say, are we focused on creating positive experiences with our brothers and sisters in Christ so that we can build fulfilling connections with one another, so that we can be an encouragement to one another in our walk with Christ? There's this interesting law that I came upon when I was in sales. I was in sales for 15 years. I started out when I was in college selling musical instruments. And then I realized, I like to talk to people. I like making a little extra money here and there. So then I stepped it up. I started to sell cars. And I thought I made it big time. And then I started to sell homes. And then I started to build communities and went back to selling cars again. And as you can imagine, I learned a lot of things throughout those experiences. But the one thing I learned was the law of reciprocity. And the law of reciprocity suggests that what we give to others is often returned to us in some form or another. And it creates a cycle of generosity and mutual benefit between the two parties. Salesmen will often use this. They'll hand you something, right, or give you something. Here's a cup of coffee. Here's a flower. Here's at the mall, the lady with the fragrances. Here's some fragrance for you to try and spray it on, and you feel this sense of generosity kind of warming up to you. Maybe in those type of scenarios you might pull back, right? But the reason you pull back is because you know instinctively you're going to want to give them something in return. So I think that we can practice this law of reciprocity in our spiritual lives and our relationships with our brothers and sisters in Christ. In Luke chapter 6, verse 38, this is a well-known passage. It says, "Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." Meaning, it's important to give to others. We need to have a willingness to give. We need to try and create this cycle of generosity and reciprocity as Christians. And we often do this. This church is great with that. This church is so giving and loving and caring, and always putting the needs of other people first. It has brought me to tears many a times just seeing the acts of kindness that happen within this church family. And I'm so incredibly grateful, and I'm inspired. And I would just say, if you're not in that cycle of generosity and reciprocity in the relationship with your brothers and sisters in Christ, then try and hop in that cycle, because it's happening all around you. So investing in relationships inevitably, though, will cost us something. What is the cost for us? Well, it's really just time and energy. We all have things to do. We all have responsibilities. We all have, for the most part, have jobs, except the children. Maybe your job is school. Undoubtedly, that takes up most of your day, and you're probably tired. But that shouldn't stop us. I wish we could get together more outside of church. I wish we could be closer to one another. We live in such a massive city that's incredibly difficult sometimes for us to just sit down and have a cup of coffee, or go to lunch, or sit around a campfire and enjoy some barbecue that Alex made. But it's a wonderful thing when we get to do it. And, in Colossians 3, verses 23 and 24, it says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know not what you will receive, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. I didn't often think about this verse in terms of how it relates to my relationships with other people, but if you think about that, relationships take work. They take time and sacrifice and energy. It is a job at times to maintain relationships with people, especially people that are outside of work and your home life. Think about this verse and what that means. The work, it's not just the work that you're putting in at your job or at your home. It's the work that you're putting in with your brothers and sisters here. It's the work that you're contributing to the church to help the church be sustainable, to help future generations of this church and of God's church. This, in modern science, is called the investment model. People are more likely to stay in their relationships and invest in them when they perceive a high level of satisfaction, a high level of investment in them. And so the more we invest in each other, the stronger our bonds will be, the stronger the church will be. And lastly, I'll say to try and sum it up here, I could go on a lot longer, but to try and sum up how we build strong relationships, it's going to take a lot of empathy, and it's going to take a lot of active listening and patience with one another. We had an opportunity to get into breakout groups, into real small groups of men, 3 or 4 of us, and we all gave the stories about how we came to know Christ, or what convinced us to be baptized, or what horrible, tragic life event flipped a switch in our head and in our hearts, and we knew that we had to turn to Christ in that moment. And that took a whole lot of empathy and a whole lot of active listening for some of us, especially if you're listening to me, because my stories get kind of long. But I appreciated that. And in Philippians, it talks about the importance of this. In chapter 2, verse 4, it says, each of you should look not only to your own interest, but also to the interest of others. And if you want to go to the science side again, there's a theory called empathy theory. What do you know? Empathy is a fundamental aspect of social interaction, allowing us to understand and share the feelings of others. According to this theory, empathy is a key component of building strong relationships and positive social interactions. Romans 12:15 backs this theory up. Rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. James chapter 1, verse 19 talks about active listening. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Approach your relationships with a spirit of humility and openness. Building strong relationships requires a willingness to actively listen to others and demonstrate that we value their thoughts and their feelings. What would you do to your brother or sister? You would be there for them. You would show them that you care. You would actively listen and demonstrate empathy and love. I think one verse that really sums this up, and I'll end here before I'll end here, but I do want to say before I read this verse is I highly, highly encourage you to refocus on building your relationships with your brothers and sisters in Christ. Again, the title is How to Win Christian Friends and Serve God's People. In 1 Corinthians chapter 13, it says, love is patient, love is kind, does not envy, does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Think about that verse in the context of the relationships that you have with the other Christians in your life. You can pick apart at least 10 different ways there that you can strengthen the relationships. And so my hope is that we will continue to do that here. Like I said, I see that every single time we get together, and I'm so happy to have that and to have this family. If you're not a part of God's family currently and you want to do that, we're here to help you and to be here for you and to love you and to show you what God's commanded you to do. If there's anything that you need from us tonight, prayers of the congregation, a hug, some encouragement, we're happy to do that as well as we stand and sing.